I've just returned from an extraordinary encounter with Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York.
The palace confirmed a decision that reshapes the future of the royal family and Prince Harry's place within it, sending shockwaves far beyond Buckingham Palace. What began as quiet whispers behind closed doors has now become a monumental and unexpected turning point. In a move filled with tension, consequence, and heartbreak, the UK Parliament officially voted to remove Prince Harry from the royal line of succession, and with King Charles personally signing the historic document, the monarchy now faces a future forever changed. This moment is not just political history, but the most dramatic shift in Harry's journey to date. At precisely 3 o'clock in the afternoon, inside the grand halls of Parliament, where centuries of power have echoed, members gathered under a heavy atmosphere, fully aware that this was no ordinary day. A speaker rose to address the chamber, speaking of tradition, duty, and the meaning of royalty before proposing the vote that left the room in stunned silence. As hands slowly rose and the votes were counted, shock and solemnity filled the room. And when the final tally was announced, the outcome was undeniable: the motion had passed, marking the first time in modern history that Parliament had taken such a decisive step against a royal successor. The decision was final, and there was no turning back. News spread rapidly, phones buzzing across London, and within Buckingham Palace the atmosphere shifted instantly as staff hurried through marble corridors clutching documents that required a royal signature. King Charles sat alone in his private study, surrounded by portraits of ancestors who had faced similar moments of consequence. When the papers were placed before him, he paused, aware that this was not only a matter of duty, but of family, his own son, the prince who had chosen a different path. Yet in that moment, Charles was not just a father. He was the king, bound by oath to protect the crown above all else. With a heavy pen and steady hand, he signed his name, making it official. Prince Harry was removed from the line of succession, erased from the future record of the monarchy. Outside the palace, crowds gathered in anger, sadness, and approval, while inside, a deep silence settled over every room. The decision was historic, unprecedented in modern times, and it marked a clear redefinition of who belonged within the royal institution. Behind closed doors, advisors spoke quietly, recognizing that this vote was not only about Harry, but about the power to question the entire system, every title, every role, every royal connection. Names like Sarah Ferguson and concerns for her daughter surfaced, raising new uncertainties about what this change could mean for others once close to the throne. Alone again in his study, King Charles felt the full weight of what had been done. The crown had been protected, but something personal had been lost forever. As the palace lights glowed against the night sky, history had been made, and the future of the monarchy stood irrevocably altered, leaving one lingering question: could anything ever truly remain the same? As a child, Harry ran through palace gardens, played soldiers with toy guns, laughed loudly, and came home dirty, adored by a mother who wanted him to understand a world far beyond royal walls. She took him to homeless shelters and hospitals, teaching him that royalty was not about crowns and balconies, but about compassion. Everything changed when she died. At just 12 years old, Harry walked behind her coffin as the world watched, his face composed while his heart quietly shattered, leaving a fracture that deepened with time. The public embraced him as the cheeky, relatable prince, respecting his military service and his work with charities supporting wounded soldiers. And for a while it seemed he had found a meaningful path. Yet behind closed doors, he sat through endless meetings filled with rigid traditions and centuries-old rules governing who he could marry, what he could say, and who he could be, leaving him feeling confined and hollow. Late nights in Kensington Palace were filled with doubt about his future, until he fell in love with a woman unlike anyone the royal family had known. American, previously married, independent, and outspoken. The palace tried to mold her to its expectations, but Harry refused to let her lose herself, as he had nearly lost his own. Small acts of resistance followed: missed engagements, sharp words, and uncomfortable questions until they grew into life-altering choices. He wanted to step back from royal duties, live part of his life elsewhere, and earn his own way, shocking a family bound by tradition and duty until death. In tense meetings with his grandmother, his father, and palace lawyers, Harry spoke of freedom and privacy, but they could not understand, seeing royalty as a gift rather than a cage. Even conversations with his brother, held in rooms where they once played as boys, ended in frustration, as William could not grasp why Harry would walk away from a role he himself had learned to accept. Harry knew things could never be the same because he had watched his mother suffer, and had seen how the palace protected the institution more fiercely than the people within it. And he refused to spend his life pretending to be happy while feeling trapped. When he chose to leave, the public reaction was sharply divided, with supporters praising his right to independence and critics accusing him of selfishness and betrayal of duty. Inside the palace, however, the dominant emotion was fear. Not of his departure, but of what it meant for the monarchy's future, since Harry remained sixth in line to the throne and represented an unsettling possibility of a king who lived abroad and had rejected royal life altogether. The uncertainty troubled Parliament, prompting quiet legal discussions about whether someone who had stepped away from royal duties should still retain a claim to the crown, even as Harry, unaware of these debates, focused on building a new life far from palace walls. As years passed and family ties weakened, the unresolved constitutional question grew more urgent until Parliament finally acted, voting swiftly to remove him from the line of succession and leaving the former spare without a place at all. Yet his removal triggered unexpected consequences, shifting the entire royal hierarchy and bringing once-forgotten figures closer to relevance, including Sarah Ferguson, whose long-shadowed presence suddenly resurfaced as the structure of the monarchy rearranged itself. The morning after the vote, Buckingham Palace awoke to a world that looked unchanged from the outside, but felt entirely different within, as Queen Camilla, burdened by responsibility she never sought, grappled with the weight of holding a fractured family together. While advisors convened below, spreading centuries-old documents across polished tables and arguing over succession laws, regency rules, and loyalty requirements, the palace filled with tension and uncertainty, revealing that Harry's removal had not resolved instability, but instead opened a new chapter of quiet power struggles that would reshape the monarchy's future. Camilla later met with Charles and immediately saw the toll the decision had taken on him. He was king, but he was also a father, and the weight of signing those papers had left him exhausted and conflicted. Sitting together in silence, she gently spoke of the need for stability, reminding him that the family and the public had to see strength, unity, and a clear sense of direction, even though Charles had no plan yet for a situation that had no precedent and no guide. That evening, the extended royal family gathered for a formal dinner beneath candlelight and crystal. Yet the mood was tense and restrained as everyone avoided the truth hanging heavily in the air, speaking instead of safe topics, while fear quietly spread among them, fear that if one prince could be removed, others might follow. Later, in a smaller, closed-door meeting with senior royals and advisors, concerns were raised about public confusion and the urgent need to project unity and continuity, prompting calls for familiar and trusted figures to step forward and reinforce the monarchy's sense of duty. It was then that the name Sarah Ferguson was cautiously introduced, bringing the room to silence as advisors argued that despite her past scandals and divorce, she had remained connected to the family, raised well-loved daughters, supported charities, and earned public affection through honesty and resilience. As Camilla reflected on Sarah's flaws, kindness, loyalty, and capacity to endure setbacks, another voice concluded that perhaps imperfection itself was what the monarchy needed most: a human presence who understood failure, recovery, and the balance between duty and compassion. The discussion stretched late into the night, with some arguing against the idea, haunted by memories of old scandals and fearful of reopening past wounds, while others saw an opportunity to reshape the royal narrative and prove the family could adapt to changing expectations. Camilla listened quietly, aware that the monarchy stood at a crossroads where tradition alone was no longer enough, and where the public increasingly wanted royals who felt human, capable of mistakes, growth, emotion, and vulnerability. Perhaps Sarah Ferguson was not a complete solution, but she might be part of one, a symbol of strength through reconciliation rather than exclusion, and a sign that the family could learn from its past instead of hiding from it. After the meeting ended and the room emptied, Camilla lingered, studying the portraits of monarchs who had weathered crises of their own, knowing it was now her responsibility to choose not only what was proper, but what was necessary. The name Sarah Ferguson stayed with her, a woman pushed to the margins, marked by scandal, yet resilient enough to endure it, and she wondered whether anyone would have the courage to invite her back. For Sarah herself, the idea seemed unimaginable. Long resigned to life on the outside looking in, she remembered her early days as a vibrant young duchess, beloved for her warmth, color, and authenticity, before mistakes, debt, misplaced trust, and relentless headlines turned admiration into embarrassment. Despite guidance, advisors, and imposed rules, Sarah had never fit neatly into royal expectations, feeling confined rather than protected. And as she pushed back, the palace gradually withdrew, setting the stage for her quiet exile from the heart of the monarchy. Sarah's marriage to Andrew ended not in anger, but in quiet sadness, worn down by pressure, scrutiny, and constant judgment, even though they had once loved each other deeply and shared 2 daughters. After the divorce, she expected to fade from royal life as others before her had. Yet she remained close to Andrew, devoted to her children, and surprisingly welcome in the late Queen's presence. Though her role was reduced to an in-between existence, retaining a title, but losing visibility, invitations, and a true place within the institution. The years that followed were difficult, marked by financial struggles, misjudged business ventures, public missteps, and media ridicule. But over time, Sarah stopped trying to win approval from those who had pushed her aside, and instead focused on what mattered most: her daughters, her grandchildren, her charity work, and causes close to her heart. Quietly and without cameras, she supported hospitals, worked with children, and built a life rooted in service and resilience. And ordinary people began to notice a woman who stumbled, owned her mistakes, and kept moving forward with humor and honesty. While Sarah herself made peace with being on the outside, the monarchy's sudden upheaval following Harry's removal shifted everything. And her name resurfaced not as scandal, but as a possible answer to a family that had grown distant and cold. The public, weary of perfection, wanted warmth, humanity, and authenticity, and Sarah's very struggles had become her strength. King Charles remembered her loyalty, her respect, and the kindness his mother had always shown her. And one afternoon, after years of silence, Sarah received a quiet invitation for tea. Though hesitant to hope, she accepted, unaware that this small, understated meeting might mark the beginning of an unexpected return. During their quiet meeting, they spoke of old memories, mistakes, forgiveness, and what it truly meant to serve under constant public scrutiny, acknowledging that the royal family would need to change if it hoped to survive. Sarah was not being invited back as a working royal that chapter had closed, but she was being asked to help in a different way, to lend her warmth and life story as proof that imperfection, growth, and second chances still had a place within the monarchy. She considered the offer carefully, torn between protecting the peaceful life she had built beyond palace walls and remembering why she had joined the family in the first place, to serve something greater than herself. For years, she had been a cautionary tale, but now she could become an example of resilience and renewal, shaped by time, wisdom, and hard-earned self-understanding. This was not about reclaiming status or glory, but about purpose, about showing that those who fall the furthest often have the most to teach about rising again. Sarah Ferguson was being offered a second chance not because she was flawless, but because she was deeply human, something the monarchy, in its struggle to remain relevant, desperately needed. Meanwhile, Prince William stood alone in the same study where his father had signed the papers, feeling the weight of judgment from the portraits lining the walls as memories of his brother flooded his mind, from childhood laughter to shared grief at their mother's funeral. Though the line of succession was now clear and stable, and his son George's future secure, the certainty brought no comfort, only a sense of loss and the painful realization that duty and family could not always coexist. Catherine later joined him by the window, sharing his silence and understanding without words. And when they finally spoke, it was of the future of protecting their children from the same forces that had slowly and irrevocably torn 2 brothers apart. Catherine was strong, yet William could see the worry behind her eyes as the pressure on their family continued to grow. And advisors moved in and out of the palace with plans to modernize the monarchy: fewer working royals, less ceremony, and a tighter focus on the direct line of succession. While some proposals made practical sense, others felt dangerously reductive, as if the monarchy were being reshaped into a business rather than a living institution, risking the loss of the human connection that gave it meaning. Charts and figures painted a troubling picture. Senior royals aging out of service, others no longer trusted to represent the crown, and an increasing burden falling almost entirely on William and Catherine, with their children too young to help for many years. William felt the weight of those numbers keenly, especially as he watched Catherine carry her duties with a smile that barely concealed her exhaustion, and he questioned how much more could reasonably be asked of her. In another meeting, advisors warned that public support was fragile and that the monarchy's survival depended on appearing not just dutiful, but genuine, compassionate, and relatable. It was then that Sarah Ferguson's name surfaced again, prompting William to recall her warmth during his childhood, her unconditional loyalty to Andrew, her dignified upbringing of Beatrice and Eugenie, and her refusal to speak ill of the family despite years of exclusion. The proposal was cautious, not a return as a working royal, but a visible, meaningful role connected to her charitable work, signaling forgiveness, growth, and the belief in second chances. Though part of William resisted, associating Sarah with a turbulent past, another part wondered whether imperfection might be more honest than the flawless image they struggled to maintain, and whether the public, weary of polish and perfection, might respond more deeply to a monarchy willing to show its scars. William watched quietly as the monarchy began to adjust to its new reality. His children had inherited the future, and he now carried the full weight of that responsibility. But he was not alone. Catherine stood by his side. His father guided him, and slowly others stepped forward to share the burden, including Sarah Ferguson, who had survived scandal and exclusion only to return with wisdom, warmth, and resilience. Advisors floated ideas about streamlining the working royals, modernizing traditions, and emphasizing duty over ceremony. Yet William worried that in cutting away too much, the human connection at the heart of the monarchy might be lost. He considered Sarah's role carefully, not a return to formal royal duties, but a meaningful presence through charities and public appearances with Beatrice and Eugenie. A living reminder that imperfection could be valuable, that second chances could strengthen rather than weaken the institution. Across the ocean, Harry watched sunsets over a land he had chosen for freedom, a life of his own making. Yet the official severing of his connection to the throne still left a sting he could not ignore. Charles, meanwhile, bore the crown with a heavy heart, aware of the sacrifices his role demanded, yet certain he had acted for the continuity of the monarchy. Together, these three lives: Charles, the king who signed away his son to protect the crown; Harry, the prince who chose liberty over duty; and Sarah, the Duchess once cast aside who returned through persistence rather than perfection, revealed a monarchy in transformation. Small, careful steps toward unity, understanding, and human connection replaced rigid tradition. And for the first time in weeks, William felt a flicker of hope. The palace, once weighed down by grief and division, now held the possibility of renewal, a chance to balance duty with compassion, tradition with flexibility, and the crown's weight with the warmth of the heart. A new era had begun, not in celebration, but in reflection, in courage, in adaptation, with questions about what the monarchy should be and the quiet promise that through pain and mistakes, something stronger and more humane could emerge. The future remained unwritten, yet for the first time in a long while, it felt full of possibility rather than fear.